I'm here at Arena Stage with Josh Kornbluth, who is starring in Citizen Josh. So thanks for being here, Josh, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. It's my pleasure to talk to you. It's really cool.
So you are a monologist who bases his shows on his life. Is that right?
It is. It's, if I could do something else, I would. I would like to portray a superhero or some sort of fantastic, detective or something, but I've only been able to tell stories about my life. That's what I start with, and so that's what I do.
So your life is quite unusual, to say the least. Your parents were members of the Communist Party, so
Yes.
You were always in the red. Is that what they say?
We were in the red, actually, in a number of ways. Yes, we were always broke, and my parents were in the party. Yeah, they told me I was going to lead a communist revolution, and it, as you can tell, hasn't happened.
So you grew up in New York and ended up going to Princeton, one of the richest universities in the country. You got close to graduating, I hear.
Very close.
From that Ivy League school, but you just didn't, and instead moved to Berkeley to write these biographical monologues.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you keep making these sharp turns?
Well, they don't seem so sharp to me. It's more like I'm kind of lunging from one side to another. But basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to reconnect with the childhood feelings that I had. It was really, it was an unusual childhood, as you said. It was unusual, but it was really beautiful. My father was so full of life, and he had this vision of a world in which people loved each other, and it was sort of like our own little hippie universe. And so, as you know, you get older and you go out into the world, and it's not totally filled with love. Yeah, I think you've noticed that as well as I have. But somehow I feel when I tell these stories, I find I'm connecting to that sort of, I know it sounds wishy-washy maybe a little bit, but to that loving place in people, to that, certainly from myself. And I feel we had opening night last night as we're talking here, and I just felt that connection again. This is my first performance here at the Arena Stage, here in Washington, away from my little bubble in Berkeley, and it's what I love to do. So I just keep going from topic to topic about something. I just pick things that are super meaningful to me, in this case, democracy.
So after writing 6 full-length shows, the last one we got to see here was the hilarious Love in Texas. Also at Arena Stage, and now as the country gets ready to elect a new president, you bring us Citizen Josh. So tell us about Citizen Josh.
Well, Citizen Josh is based on, it started from my frustration right after the last election. My guy didn't win.
Who was that?
Is he a windsurfer? I don't know that much about him, but the thing is, for me, it wasn't even so much that my guy didn't win. It was the idea that I had this idea well, even if he won, is this all I am doing to try to help our country to be a citizen? Is voting every 4 years, or maybe in some midterm election? It didn't feel like I was really doing enough to make our democracy flourish. And I also felt like people were shouting at each other, shouting at one another, not only on the television, but also in my little neighborhood park in Berkeley. And I was one of the shouters, because when people disagreed with me, I go, well, how can you possibly disagree with me? I must be right. And that made me start on this quest. It's kind of a quest to try to figure out, well, how do we talk to each other in a civil way? How do I do that? How do I become a real citizen? And that led me on the journey of this piece.
So how do we become a better citizen?
I think what we're doing now actually is talk to each other. I think to talk to each other about things that we really care about, and to take each other seriously, especially when we disagree. That's something that just seems so important to me. And I guess the issue also that really drove it home to me, or made it urgent, especially urgent to me, was global warming. I have a son now. He just turned 11, and the idea of the world that he's going to inherit, not just the global warming, of course, but the enormous debt and just all of the instability, that's what my generation right now is leaving to the future generations. And it made me really feel like I have to do something.
And who knows what will happen with this financial crisis that's happening now?
No, it's a good thing that I don't have any stocks or any wealth at all.
That's nice not having any money in this respect, I must say.
Well, that's one thing that drew me to the theater. I felt I really saw an opportunity not to have any money for a long period of time.
So is there much improvising in the show still?
There isn't. I do completely improvise developing my show, but once I start, there's almost no improvising. I try to weave everything together. I tell this story about trying to become a citizen, and about my family, and about my dad and my brothers and sister, and Well, my sister doesn't come up so much in this one, but I tell all these stories, and what I try to do with my collaborator, David Dower, is weave them together so that really by the time they're just in the right shape, then I just want to repeat that, and I hope that it has this impact on the audience. But then after almost every show, I do talk with people. I'm doing these, what we're calling talkbacks. I guess it's not our term, but I'm talking with people, all sorts of people about democracy, pollsters, political scientists, activists, and we're also doing a survey that we're giving to the audience beforehand and then showing the results after, so that the audience can stay a little after the show and see what they think and see what the people sitting next to them or near them think.
That's a brilliant way of keeping them awake. I must say.
Well, we use everything possible.
Anything improvised last night?
Last night, well, I did mention that it was scary and exciting for me because it was opening night. that changed a little bit. But other than that, we had made, David Dower and I had made a few little changes just based on feedback that we'd gotten from our dress rehearsal and from Molly Smith, who's the artistic director, and we'll probably keep tinkering with it. But last night, it was the show. It was the show, and it was just incredibly fun to do, and it was a great relief to have my pants didn't fall down or something like that.
Any Jews in the audience last night? I heard some Elijah joke just didn't make it.
Well, that's the thing, if you're going to have a Jewish joke, and I have to confess I have a few in this piece. Although, to paraphrase the old Levy's bread commercial, you don't have to be Jewish to love my show, I don't think. But the Jewish jokes weren't going over as big as they usually do, and then I'm going, Yom Kippur, yes. And so I understood atonement for the first time, in a really visceral way.
Well, let's pass over this.
Touche.
Although this play is mostly about you as an adult, we learn more about your family, especially your younger brother. I hear it's tremendously moving because I'm seeing it tonight. When you talk about him and Citizen Josh, how's he doing, by the way?
My brother is doing great. It's one of the questions people ask me, probably the most asked question, because I tell this story about my brother Sammy, who was born on September 30th in the bicentennial year, and he was incredibly premature, and he wasn't thriving. He was in trouble medically, and this was at a very early stage for medicine, dealing with very, very premature babies. And as I talk about, my father did something just based on his own instincts. My father did something that the experts were saying, well, it's silly, it's not going to work. And it worked, and Sammy thrived and survived thanks to what my father did, and which I talk about in the piece. And then now Sammy, who started out at 2 pounds 1 ounces, easily over 200 pounds, strong, very funny, very ebullient young man. He just turned 32. It was just his birthday.
So how does your family feel about the monologues?
They're, very forgiving. My mom is used to being in all my monologues when she's in town. She's living in Chicago now, but when she comes to town, I'm performing. Not only does she laugh at the jokes, even if she might be a little bit the brunt of the joke, but she also, when she's seen the show, she'll glare at people if she doesn't think they're laughing enough at a particular joke. So, my family's very supportive.
And now that you have an 8-year-old son, Guthrie, what does he tell people when they ask what you do?
Well, he just turned 11. He was 8 when I experienced some of the things I talk about in this piece, and he's really into it. He seems, and I haven't pushed him in any way to do this, but at like the Jewish Community Center when he used to go to after school, and he's a natural performer. He's really interested in democracy and the election. He actually follows. And now I'm on the road. I'm away from my wife and son, which is very difficult, and they're back home in California. But I've been sending him links because he wants to follow what the Electoral College vote is. Like, he doesn't just want the national poll. My mood is so affected by what the polls are.
So does Guthrie like being in your monologues?
He hasn't complained. He hasn't complained so far. I actually try to minimize. I don't mention his name in the monologue, or my wife's name actually in this one. And I couldn't leave them out completely because they're the center of my life. But I'm hoping that by not talking about Guthrie too much in my monologues, that perhaps if he becomes a monologuist when he grows up, that he will be generous and not talk about me and all the embarrassing things he could say.
We usually see David Dower, Arena Stage's associate artistic director, mixing with audiences before an arena show and doing pre-show introductions. I see you have a long association with him. Tell us about David and about working with him.
Well, David and I started working together when my son was in utero. And since my son just turned 11, it would be about 11 and a half years. I had known David through his work in the Bay Area. We were both there. I still live there, but he was in San Francisco, and he ran a thing, not ran a thing. He was in a thing. He had started a thing called the Z Collective, and it was this really cool theatrical troupe where they performed like a medical drama in a hospital. I saw them do this really funny play. It was a comedy that takes place in an office, and they did it in an office building at night. Like you took the elevators up, but besides the novelty of it, they were really great. And then he ran something called the Z Space, which helped theater people like me. And then when someone recommended, I was looking for a director for a new piece, and someone told me, well, David Dower has done directed solo shows. And so I called him, I got his number, and I called him, and all I said over the phone, I said, David, I'm Josh Kornbluth. I think we met, once or twice, and I just realized I looked like Ben Franklin, and I would like you to direct me in a show about it and also collaborate with me. And he said, fine. And so that was shocking. And then
electrifying.
Yes, it was. Damn, I can't come up with a kite joke fast enough here. But see, that's what happens when I don't have enough coffee before an interview. But in any case, you win this one. You win this round, my friend. Okay. But in any case, David and I started working together, and it is just such an incredible experience. We become very good friends, but also he really pushes me. We really, I think, complement each other. He's really great at structure. I can riff. I talked about how I improvise things. I improvise, and then David starts seeing the shape. If it weren't for David,
he starts refocusing you.
Oh, yeah, continually. But he doesn't start too early. He lets me sort of really sort of let everything go and get all the threads thrown out before he starts to try to weave them together with me. It's just a marvelous collaboration. It was somewhat traumatic for me as well as for many others in the Bay Area theater community when David came over here to Arena, although we were very proud of him and happy for him. But I've missed being in proximity to him, and so that's one of the extra great pleasures I have during this Arena stage run.
So he helped lure you here, so we have a lot to thank him for.
We have a lot to thank. He's an incredible guy. He's a great director, great theater artist, and also really great theater administrator. It's very cool.
So
cool dude.
Let's go back to the opinion surveys you asked the audiences to fill out before the show. I know it's early in the run, but from what you've seen so far and your other experience here, how are Washington audiences different?
Well, that's a very Jewish question. You mean, how was last night's audience?
Yeah, how were they?
More different from every other survey night? Yes.
How were the critics? Were they nice?
That I don't know yet. Well, we have one review that I've been shown that was really great.
Our guy.
So thank you. I haven't been able to do the analysis of it yet. David was sort of was going over that, so I haven't quite. But one thing that I overheard while I was changing, and David was handling the survey results last night, it seemed to sound like people in Washington, not surprisingly, felt that they were right about things, perhaps a bit more than people in Berkeley. By right, I mean correct. And also, I think it sounded like that they felt that they had more political power, which is one of our questions. Do you feel personally that you have political power? And, oftentimes when we've asked that in other places, almost everyone has said no. And here, more people said yes.
Going back to that Jewish joke that didn't work, have you considered maybe doing a little glossary in your program?
You think I don't know. I mean, when we have to do glossaries for Jewish jokes in the theater, what have we come to?
People don't understand Jewish jokes.
I mean, it's not like a lot. I mean, I'm not like Tevye out there. I just have a couple. I'm a Jew and I say some Jewish things.
So another interesting thing, you have discussions. You talked about discussions after the show, and you even invite non-ticket buyers to come to them. Is that true?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
So do you go out on the street and pull people in, or how do you do that?
Well, I'm capable of doing that. I used to, when I started in San Francisco, sometimes I wouldn't have any audience. I mean, not like a small audience. I mean, no audience. And so I would go out around North Beach, and I would make people, not make them, but I would urge them to come back with me for free. I haven't done that here yet. It seems like Arena has a whole big, great staff for doing that. So
they do.
Yeah. So I think right now I can, in this run at least, I can focus on doing my show.
So anything bizarre happen at these discussions you'd like to share with us?
Well, in Berkeley, people, I have these discussions after the show. I have these talkbacks, and people in Berkeley is my new hometown. I love it. It's my favorite place to live now. And I grew up in New York, but ich bin ein Berkeleyite right now. And people really yell out when they want to get involved in the discussion, and they want to make sure, generally speaking, that that the discussion is getting progressive enough. and so I've had people who will go on, or they'll stand up, and instead of asking a question, it'll be like Das Kapital, it'll be like a 90-minute, it would be, unless you sort of gently say, well, we have other people here to ask questions. But no, for the most part, it hasn't been bizarre at all, though. It's been really great. A lot of people tend to stay after the show for these discussions and come back. People who saw previous shows come back throughout their run sometimes to see the talkbacks, and we have really engaged conversations about things. People are really hungry. I know I am. People are really hungry to talk seriously. I mean, to talk about democracy and our questions about it and our fears for it. And it's an incredibly complex and interesting issue. And to have that opportunity, and not to be, for the most part, yelling, but expressing ourselves and hearing other points of view. It's very exciting to me.
So how's the thesis coming along?
Well, I don't want to give away everything, to the listeners who have not yet come to see my show, but I'm very close. I'm very close. I have now received, as of last week, this is very recent, I received a passing grade from my advisor.
Well, mazel tov.
Thank you. My mother is kvelling.
So is it true that performing Citizen Josh around the country might earn you that degree from Princeton?
I'm hoping so. It's been a while. I was class of 1980. And
Me too.
Really?
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah.
I am hoping that traveling around the country, among other things, doing a Citizen Josh, besides fomenting democracy, will also subsidiarily, if that's a word, help earn me my degree. Maybe even they will see fit to have me perform the show at Princeton itself.
So where do you take the show next?
I am going back to Berkeley. I'm doing a benefit with the show right before the election, like the day before the election. And then after that, I am waiting to hear from my booking people.
Well, thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for staying.
Good luck with the rest of the run here at Arena Stage.
Thank you. Thanks. It's been a pleasure.
Citizen Josh is playing through October 26th at Arena Stage, 1800 South Bell Street in Arlington, Virginia, in the Crystal City Metro on the blue and yellow lines. For tickets, go to their website, www.arenastage.org, or call their box office, 202-488-3300.